Good morning. My name is Lucinda Clark, and I wear many hats, but today I am the founder of the Poetry Matters Project because it's National Poetry Month, and I
Yes,
have the
ma'am.
distinct I have the distinct honor of interviewing two ladies who I've been working with. I've gotten to know them in different capacities as poets. And today we're just going to have a conversation where they share with us in their own words. First, we have Elizabeth John, and she's also known by Elizabeth Michoud,
Michaud.
Michaud,
Hmm.
and she's going to tell us a little bit about that, who's in the Atlanta, Georgia area. And then we have Kelsey Bigelow, and Kelsey's out in Iowa. So we're working a couple of time zones because of the time change. I'm not really sure what time it is. I don't know about what the weather is where you are, but they said it was gonna, be tornadoes. Then it was gonna rain, but right now it's going in and out. So if my lighting goes in and out here, that's the reason why. Okay, so um, we're going to do three questions. The first one is, what would you like the literary slash poetry community to know about you? Who would like to go first?
I can go first, I guess.
Okay,
Okay,
Elizabeth.
well, my name's Elizabeth Michaud. That's the name that I like to write under. And I kind of just came into poetry. My favorite story to tell about me going into poetry is really, I used to write short stories, and I had this dream that I would write a novel. But, I started with short stories, which was fine. But the problem was I personally am kind of lazy and I'm impatient. And those are probably not the two best qualities for a writer. So I would write my short stories, have a good time and everything. But the process would just be laborious. And I was like, I want to be done with it already. And slowly it came to me that I could still tell a story, but I could use the short form of poetry to do so. And so it happened by accident. But I would start write, one here, one there. And but eventually I just kind of came upon the idea that, oh, I can do this a lot faster in a poem. Oh, this will be done in a minute. And then I get that instant gratification of it being done, and I can move on to the next one. And yet it was still also very challenging because poetry being a short form, you have to be very concise. Your word choice really has to be on point. It also has to be precise. And so but basically that's how I got my start. And I just realized I really like narrative poetry. I like telling a story within a poem that's a distinct beginning, middle, and an end, and get my point out that way. So that's how I got started.
Okay. And so, is there anything else you'd like people to know about you? I mean, are you a professional poet? Are you doing this full time, or what else are you doing?
Well, I'm definitely not a professional poet because I have a regular full-time job. I'm a teacher. I teach in a high school. So, but I used to write, just initially it was just for me, for my own gratification. Um, Especially when I started, like I said, I started writing short stories and things, and I just felt like, hey, I'm kind of good at this. And I do enjoy it, and I love whatever message I'm telling. And I feel like when I write my poetry, it's very different. I think I almost feel like I started writing poetry in a different time. Like the way poetry now, to me, it's very, it's like a puzzle sometimes, and you really have to work to figure it out. And, sometimes the metaphors are really out there, or sometimes I feel like I've noticed poems, they're like three lines, and it's not a haiku, it's just a statement or just a sentence. And that is considered a poem now. And it's like, no. Me personally, I'm just like, no, tell me something, set my imagination on fire, take me somewhere. So that's kind of how, and so I think my poetry tends to be very um simple in terms of meaning, but there's an artistry to the words that I like to use, generally speaking. It just depends on what the poem is and what the subject matter is. And I know I do like to write about a lot of different things, mainly because I love to use prompts to write my poetry. Over the years, I love a good prompt because it's very freeing and it doesn't restrict you to one type of idea or notion or anything like that. And so, I'll get an idea and I will just go with it. It just keeps me from being pigeonholed into one box. So,
Wow, well, that's a great explanation. You've obviously mastered it enough that your book became one of the best book award finalists for 2023.
yes, thank
So
you.
congratulations on that.
Thank you. I was very excited. Yes.
Okay, Kelsey, what would you like the literary slash poetry community to know about you?
I guess what would I want people to know about me? I do a lot of work as a mental health poet. I am a professional poet. It's my full-time job. And I think it's the coolest thing ever that I get to be who I needed when I was young. And I do a lot of work with people of all ages, helping show how poetry can be a coping tool and can help you process life and your feelings or your experiences or whatever. Because for me, that was how I got my start, was it back in middle school, what, 13 years old. I was going through some of the hardest stuff in my life and I had no one to talk to. And so instead I talked to my notebook. And my free writing turned into poetry, and poetry became a more accurate way for me to describe what I was experiencing and feeling. And that was my own private teenage angst that I wasn't going to share with anybody ever, until about college. My sophomore year of college was when my mom passed away, and my writing became about processing that grief. But I also was forced to share it in creative writing class for workshop, and I got to see the positive impact it had on my classmates, and that just changed what how I approached poetry. And so to this day, writing poetry is still very much for me, but sharing it and sharing my story through poetry is about helping others see that it's okay to talk about the hard stuff. It's okay, um, that not every day is a good day, that we're a little less alone in all of the heavy stuff. And so I get to do that in my work, in performances and workshops and keynotes and all of that good stuff. So that's what I do.
Wow, that's really cool that you actually get to use poetry and your literary activity and you're a professional. There's a myth out there that you can't make money off of this. You can't live off of it. So you're a great example of the fact that that is not true. But you're also a younger person, so for some of us who have had a little more life, it's like, boy, can you pull it off with a couple a couple of kids and other things like that. But congratulations on that. You too. You also have a new book, and I mean, it released like what, 2 days ago?
It's releasing in less than 24 hours. It releases tomorrow.
Okay, congratulations. Yeah. I when you told me, because I was like, I don't have a copy of it. I was trying to scramble to get that, but do you have a picture of it there? Because I know Elizabeth, we have yours. I have yours here. Yeah.
Yes.
So the thing that I noticed about both of you is that you've taken in reading Elizabeth's work and in looking at your background, both of you do some beautiful work with grief. And we'll get to that towards, as we get a little bit further into the interview. So, segue into the second question. Tell us a little bit about your work with youth, young people.
Okay. Well, like I said, I'm a teacher. I've been teaching for 28 years now, and I've my degree is in French and Spanish. So right now I'm working as a French teacher, and that's really the language I'm stronger in. But over the course of my career, I've taught both French and Spanish. And I realized, when I became a teacher, it was a fluke because I had just graduated from college and I had a degree in French and Spanish. And I was like, well, what am I supposed to do with this now? And I was working at American Express, I remember, and I was like, no, I've spent too much money on this degree. I got to go find do. So I said, okay, well, let me just be a teacher. How hard can it be? Who knew? So famous last words, but it turned out that the job fit me like a glove, and because especially when I first started, it's not so much like that anymore. But when I first started, we had a lot of autonomy, and I get along great with the kids. I think they are key in keeping me young at heart. I think it's very important actually. And so I just really enjoyed. And then of course over the years as I've become, a mom and I have my own kids, um, teaching other people's children really inspired me to do my best work because I want my children getting the benefit of teachers who are 100% committed to them and their education. So, that's where we are.
Yeah. Well, quick thought. So with a French and Spanish degree, you never thought about becoming a translator?
I did. I wanted to become, initially, that's what I wanted to do. And it's funny because my family is Haitian. And so one of my aunts lived in France. When she was old enough, she moved and lived in France. She married a Frenchman, born and raised, and they had a kid who is a Frenchman. And at the time when I was doing my academic year abroad, he was dating a girl who was German. And she was living in Paris. She was living with him, and she was working as a translator. And I say all this to say she spoke, obviously, German was her first language, spoke it fluently, but she spoke French at near native levels. And she also spoke English. And I would tell her, I want to be an interpreter. And despite her level of fluency, she was like, Elizabeth, you have to live in Europe in order to do that. She's like, I'm so fluent. And she tried the test for interpretation. She was like, it's impossible. It's so hard. And she was like, as a matter of fact, she taught me the difference between interpretation and translating, because interpretation is the live, you're hearing it in one language and you're spitting it out in the other language, all in real time and at the same time. Translation is when you're reading stuff and you're translating documents where you have that time to absorb the language and everything. But she was like, you have to live in Europe so you can get that level of fluency, so you can go through any register that you need to in order to be successful. And at the time I was 24, I didn't know any better. I was like, no, I'm not living up here. It was great. It was a good experience, but no, I want to go back home. And so that's how that happened.
Wow.
Looking back now, I should have stayed and I would have stayed, but
Oh my goodness, because translation is hot.
Mhm.
We do translation here, but something you mentioned is that um, translating words to another listener is different than literary translation.
Exactly.
And so yeah, maybe we'll chat about that a little, on another call.
Absolutely.
But that's really interesting. And so just one quick question about your work with high schoolers. How's it going? I mean, are they okay? I mean,
I
we
mean, I think they're okay. There's a lot of, it's funny how it has changed. Like, mental health discussions are huge now. What is the
Mhm.
state of the kids' mental health? How are they doing? And like I said, when I started, I was 24, and that wasn't even a conversation. Kids show up, came to school, did what you had to do, and you left. And now we have to be very cognizant of their social emotional well-being. Um, it's a whole thing. I think at our school, the school that I'm currently at is a fine arts high school, and I think that gives the kids a lot of outlets because they get to be creative, and I think that helps them a lot. Um, so that said, I don't really see it as much, but I'm not going to say it's not going on. But I know we have a very good counseling center team at our school, and they watch out for the kids. So
Okay. And the name of the school, because it's
I
here in
teach I teach in Clayton
okay,
County Schools at Stillwell School of the Arts.
Stillwell. Oh,
Stillwell.
Stillwell. Okay, Stillwell School of the Arts.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, Kelsey, your work with youth.
Yeah, my work with youth is it's a little more sporadic just in the nature of how I operate. I am occasionally going into classrooms to sorry, I think my internet cut out. Okay, I'm back. I'm occasionally going into classrooms to be a guest poet for a day or lead a workshop for a day or do a performance after school or that sort of thing, or lead after school programs with elementary schools. So mine's a little bit more sporadic. It's not as constant as Elizabeth with being a teacher in the schools, but yeah, I've done teaching artist work as after school programs with elementary age, and just introducing them to the concept of storytelling and how metaphor works and that kind of thing. I've done a lot of work with the middle school ages, which are kind of my favorite to work with, because that was when I found poetry, and I know they're going through a lot that they're never going to tell anybody. And so I like giving them the tool that I learned when I was their age, and getting to um, introduce them to just the concept of being vulnerable, even if it's private. And then with high schoolers, I like doing the same thing if they aren't already doing poetry, but also showing them that you can choose a career path that is more aligned with who you are as a person, rather than just what people expect of you. As somebody who lived a career because people expected it, and then eventually followed what I actually wanted. I like showing high school age, especially, that that's possible. And then I've also been in colleges as well. But I do a lot of that. My other teaching artist work that I do more so in the community outside of schools is going into different mental health organizations or rehab centers, or I've recently been spending most of my time in our local detention center, and working with the youth there, and kind of giving them an outlet, and hopefully something to help them process everything they're going through, and give them a little motivation to do the work and get out and live their life again. And so that's kind of the work that I get to do.
Yeah. Wow. It is so, I mean, when you listen to both sides of what the two of you do as a professional teacher and a professional poet, it just makes me want to share just real quick, because what the two of you are describing, that's what we do in our poetry work. I actually did a middle school, no, it was an elementary school on Monday, and we did the Dear Poet program. And it's funny how, because teachers have to be more aware of the young people's well-being and how the parents might feel about it, we did a poem by that was off of the Academy of American Poets for Dear Poet, for the Dear Poet program. And after the poet read the poem, these kids zoomed in on the fact that that the poet was concerned about his family. All the other issues, they kind of set that aside because they had to write a letter to the poet.
Mm.
And every last one of them, I said, "What question would you like to ask?" They said, "Is your family okay? You know, I'm hoping your mom is okay," because there was reference the mother was in the hospital, that kind of thing. And it was such a moving experience for the teacher, myself, because you go in as you probably know, Kelsey, we're not required to adhere to whatever the constraints are of coming into a classroom setting with parents and administrators and all that. And both of us, we all have the ability to bring out the best in the students, especially the ones who are sitting in the corner. They're not uttering a sound, and they come out with the most powerful,
Mhm.
perceptive, moving words. It just give me goosebumps every time I think about it.
It is always the
So
quiet ones, the ones who seem like I'm not actually interested. I'm like, I can see that you are the most engaged person in this room.
Right.
yeah. So it's great work with what both of you are doing. And so I'll follow up for you, Kelsey, is how is it out there in Iowa? See, we're here in Georgia, right. Our neighbor is Florida, and our
Mhm.
other neighbor is South Carolina. And if you were just looking at the news, it's probably scary to do anything here. But how's it out there in
Yeah.
Iowa?
Oh, who would I relate us to? I would uh, put us on a similar level of Florida right now. So it's not
Mhm,
fun out here.
mhm,
We are seeing way too many crucial things in our schools be cut. And we are very much I think the direction of our education here is looking grim, and it's not always a safe space for our young people. But that's why I think our work is so important, is to still be a safe space, or find ways to follow the rules while also not following the rules so that people can still be who they are here. But that it's kind of rough out here.
I'm sorry to hear that. Well, hopefully, segueing into the next question, we can work on that. Um, Kelsey, I know you from working with you with the Blackberry Peach Slam competition. I knew of you last year, and then I've gotten to know you even better because we are actually working on that component for the NFSPS convention, which is coming in June. And so, if you two could speak about that, what you know about it, and what your thoughts are, because let's just say there's a teacher out there or a person who's working with youth who has seen what we have sent out about the youth festival. What would you like to add? I mean, who would you
Yeah.
like to address? That kind of thing. What? Why?
Yeah, the youth festival, the Blackberry Peach Youth Festival it's going to be just a fantastic day for youth. Just hearing about last year's, I can promise you the young people will walk away with something of value. I was not part of the first year that they did it. This is our third year doing the youth mini festival. But last year, just the youth, there was a lot of local youth, but there were some youth that traveled from other states that came. So they got to interact with people with youth from other cultural or regional from other regional cultures in the States, which that in itself is always huge, especially for young people. But they got to learn from phenomenal award-winning poets and really hone their craft better and feel a little bit more empowered to explore their creativity and explore the idea of performing if they'd never had before, or maybe validate their performance if they have been performing for a while. And it's just so cool. There's going to be, I think there's 3 workshops from 3 fantastic poets. There's the youth poetry slam that's got, I think it's over $1,000 worth of cash prizes, which like we love money for poetry, especially money for young poets. Let's do that.
Yay!
And then we'll also have a cash prize for the most inspired poem, which is a tradition that the Blackberry Peach does for the youth festival. And then there's also going to be like a community building activity, like for an hour or two, that's just about being in poetry space with each other and the youth getting to bond and come up with chants or whatever it is that they want to do. It's just going to be a really great day. Plus, for the lunch, they get to have lunch with the rest of the convention. So they're going to be among poets, adult poets, and learning from all the different Georgia keynotes that are going to be there and all the other national keynotes that are coming. It's just going to be a fantastic day, and it's free to
Right.
attend, which is
Yeah.
incredible.
I was gonna say that again. How much does it cost?
It costs a whopping $0.
$0. Wow, that's amazing. That's an opportunity. Yeah. And so Elizabeth, you're working with through GPS as the well, you're wearing a one hat as the membership chair, and then we
Right.
tapped you to help us work with the youth. Do you have any thoughts on it from what you've seen so far, or is there anything you can say to the
I
educators?
well, I think it'd be a great opportunity for kids, because they like to express themselves. And this is a good, we were using the word earlier, a safe space for the kids to be able to do that. It's so important for them now, to express themselves without judgment, and ideally without fear. There's going to be some nerves, of course, but, to be able to have a space that is all about being creative. So I know within my school, I'm working with our English department chair to see if we can get some kids out there. I think our kids would appreciate it because I know we already have some kids who like to do stuff like write scripts and things like that. So, just even my talking with my students, because I'm an academic subject since I teach French, but the arts are all day long in our building. And so I hear the conversations that the kids have. And so there are a lot of writers out within our student body. So it's good to try and see if we can engage them and get them direct them there to use their creative skills in a different way.
Mm.
So I think
So
it's a good opportunity.
yeah. So do you think it's a good idea to just share it with all students, because maybe one of the students is um
More than likely, we will. What we're doing is every kid has to take English. Every kid in the building has to take English. So
mhm,
the first best um, starting point to disseminate that information is through the English department, especially if, there are teachers who they have poetry units that they do. So, one of our English, we're doing poetry right now. We're studying these, that, this, that, poet. And so it's a really good way to tie in something from the outside and bring it into the classroom. So
okay, okay.
yeah, it works out pretty well that way.
Yeah. Now, when we had a conversation about it before, in Georgia, the school year ends when? I don't
It
have
depends
that.
on the district. In my
Okay.
district, I think our last day is like the 23rd of May, which is really early. Well, it feels early, but that's only because we didn't get a winter break in February. But it just depends. It varies. Most, I would say, statewide, without knowing for sure, just guessing based on like the local schools in my area, the local school districts in my area, I would say everybody would be out by June the 1st. I think we would be done by June the 1st.
June 1st. Okay. Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
the
And
latest.
yeah. And what's so crazy about that is that when I'm originally from the Northeast, we went to school. It almost felt like all the way to at least the end of June,
Right.
and it was only like a month. But now it's a really long span of time.
It
So
is kind of
I
long. But it just
mhm,
depends on the school district because it depends on everybody's individual calendars. Like I work in Clayton County schools now, but I live in Henry County and I used to work in Henry County. And Henry County had a calendar where, and it took me a while to understand what was going on. Our summers were kind of short. But what happened was they took 2 weeks of our summer vacation and dispersed them into the school year. So almost every 6 weeks we were off, just about, okay, something like that. And so it's like, oh, okay, that works. So the school year might have gone a little bit longer, but again, we got those 2 extra weeks embedded into the actual school year calendar. So it just depends. So like in Clayton, we only get one of those weeks. They take 1 week of our summer and embed it into the calendar in the fall. So we have something called fall break, which happens like the first week of October. But in the spring, like in Henry, we would have had Henry has what they call midwinter break in February, and then
mhm.
6 weeks later we have spring. They have spring break in April, and in Clayton they took that away. So it just depends on everybody's calendar.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit like Augusta, where next week is Masters Week. All the
Mhm.
golfers come, and it's a spring break, but everybody's tuned into golf, and
Right,
I've pitched it to where are the golfing poets, and they probably stay home because they don't they
right.
don't come out to
Mhm.
read. But anyway, so that's interesting that you and thank you for bringing that up, so we know how we need to work to, because we only have 2 more months
Right.
before the event is here. Wow, this has been very, very interesting, very, very enlightening and informative. But of course, you know that I cannot let you ladies go without you sharing some of your work. And so, if you would like to take out your
Yep.
books, and let's see, looking at the time, we're actually at a pretty good time. So if you'd like to read one or two of your poems, now is the time to do so.
Okay. Who's going first? Me? Kelsey?
You go for it. I'm
All
still
right.
deciding.
Okay, no problem. No problem. Okay, so I'm gonna read this poem called Old Tree, and I wrote it years and years ago, but it's one of my favorite poems, and it was based on a prompt, actually. They wanted us to write a poem about a tree, and I was like, what? A tree? That has to be the most dry thing ever. But while I was contemplating, because I wasn't even gonna write this poem, because I was like, I'm not writing a poem about a tree, because I had a sense of the kind of expectation or what they wanted from this poem. But in my neighborhood, there's a neighborhood off to the side. One day I was driving around and I wanted to see what this neighborhood looked like because I passed it all the time, but I just didn't know. So while I'm driving around, I happen to come upon this big old oak tree, very, very old, very mature. It was beautiful. And the branches were very strong and stiff. And given the neighborhood that I was in, I remember I was struck and I thought, somebody hanged a black man from that tree. I just knew it in my bones. And so, in light of this prompt and this tree that I was looking at, I was like, okay, I know exactly what I'm going to write. So that's the story behind this poem. This poem is called Old Tree. Old tree, dark tree, sinister tree. I know about you and them secrets you like to keep behind leaves so green and flowers so fresh, but that ain't nothing but lies and falsehoods. Because when the spring goes by and that winter come, I see you for what you are, for what you done. That's right, old tree, with your branches bare, with your trunk scarred. You can't hide behind your leaves. You can't hide behind no spring renewal. Because I know about you, old tree, what you done, what you hung. From branches so strong, they held the weight of a man, an innocent man, a black man. Oh, yeah, I remember, old tree, how you used to give us shade, used to keep us from the sun when we made love. And you pretended you was our friend, our tree, but you was his tree, that white man's tree. And when that white man come with that rope so thick, that rope so strong, you gave him a branch, you gave him an arm, and you let that white man steal a life, old tree. You let him take my love. And there's that one. Thank you.
Mm.
Mm.
So that's where we are.
Do you have an upbeat one as I recover?
Kelsey could go, and then I could find one that's lighter for sure.
I mean, I'm not upbeat either.
I
No,
do
no,
have
I'm
one
not.
that's lighter, but you could
It's
go ahead and
fine.
look.
It's
Let me see
okay.
if I can find one more. I might have something more.
Okay. Okay, Kelsey.
All right. The first one I'll share is from my, they're both from my book, is one that I actually, so this book is kind of unpacking my childhood, and I intentionally decided to give voice to my past self because she never spoke up. And so I've included poems in here that I wrote when I was younger. And when I was going through a bunch of old school papers and report cards that my dad passed back to me this last year, I found a line that I wrote when I was in third grade. That was just the most profound thing. And so the first line of this poem I wrote in third grade, and this poem is about that. So it's titled Third Grade. My storms are as loud as a whisper. I think my teacher sees it. My report card says Kelsey is quiet and helpful in class, but she will have to have extra effort at home to learn. Please assist her in doing so. I wonder if he's trying to teach my parents too. I wonder if he knows that they don't read his reports. I wonder if he knows I'm quiet because I'm ready for their forecast. I wonder if he knows how tightly I hold my stuffed bear when their thunder shakes my walls each night. I wonder if he knows I'm quiet because their rain muted me. I wonder if he knows I try to splash in the puddles that I create every day as I walk to school so that I can keep my storms as loud as a whisper in his classroom.
Wow. Oh my
That's
goodness.
lovely.
You ladies are bringing it. Whew.
That's lovely.
Mm,
Mhm.
third grade. Wow. Okay.
All
Okay.
right.
Ooh.
All right. That's a lot to carry in third grade. That's a lot
A
of
lot to carry.
carry in third grade. I
Life's
don't
been
Wow.
think
a lot.
I don't think I could be a elementary school teacher. It's funny the things that kids at that age bring. And it's not saying that
Mhm.
it's any different or that the kids in high school have anything less that they're carrying, but it just feels so much heavier when you're that little, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ooh.
and that was something I was really thinking about. And I have a lot of friends who are teachers, and I've asked them, do you notice the ones who are going through things that aren't talking about it, because I never told people what I was going through, but that was what I was wondering with this was, did my teacher notice?
I gotta
Mm,
Because it
tell
was
you,
such a, you
as a
know,
teacher, sometimes it's hard because it's really hard to know for sure what's going on. And it's interesting in that it's always through writing that you get any kind of glimpse of, if you know, if you're going to get any kind of information from the kid, it'll always be through some kind of writing, some form or fashion. You know, that's the thing that I notice because my class is French, so my kids are writing in French, and it's very specific. It's not like they speak French fluently, so it's very specific. But every once in a while, I'll give them a random assignment or something that they can write it in English for whatever reason. And it's usually like they're comparing this to that or whatever. But in those moments, sometimes you'll just get these little statements, and I'm like, whoa, where did that? Because otherwise, there's almost no way to know for sure, you know. But
mm,
every once in a while, it's in writing to me when you see it. And like I know what the school that I'm currently at, the visual arts kids, the ones who paint and draw,
mhm.
that's the other venue that you might get a glimpse of something. So
mm.
That's why the
Well,
outlets are important.
yeah, I agree.
yeah, because I was going to say, well, what do you think would happen if you were to read your poems to your students? Like Elizabeth, the poem you just read, what do you think would happen if
I
you read
think
that
my
poem?
the relationship I have with my kids, I think my kids would be stunned because they wouldn't anticipate um anything like that coming from me. And
Mhm.
so I think they'd be shocked. I think they'd be like, "Whoa, Miss John, you what? You wrote this or you wrote that?"
Yeah.
I think they'd be surprised. Yeah,
Yeah, your visualization was very, very strong. You move through seasons, you move through
hmm
emotions, and then wow, it's just well, actually, I read it. I read it before hearing you read it,
yeah,
and that's the other thing that young people need to understand. You can listen to a poem, and it's a totally different experience once you've read it, and
right,
then when you hear it from the poet themselves, it's a totally different, you could have a totally different understanding of what the poem is about. But that one, very visual. And then yours, Kelsey, oh man, I mean, if have you ever, you haven't read it yet, have you read it to in any situations with young people or you just
Not with young people yet. I haven't had the opportunity yet, but I will after my book comes out. I have a whole tour and a few stops with young people. So I will intentionally share that third grade one, and then I either one that I wrote at 16 or 18 that are in there that I would want to share with them.
yeah, the thing to do is when both of you read, just pause because people are holding, they're like, oh my God. And then all of a sudden they're trying to decide whether they should let the tear
Mm.
be shed or whether they should just hold and just oh my goodness, thank you for that, both of you. Well, we're down to a few more minutes, and I don't want us to run over in terms of our time. Is there anything that you want to ask each other, or you want to share with the audience in general, or do you, if you like, if you have another poem? I mean, we have time for that.
you want something
But
light and silly?
oh man, funny. Do you have anything fun?
I
I
have
do.
one.
I have some silly ones. I'm just looking for it right now. Give me 1 second.
I'd love to hear a silly one. I
Yeah.
have a hopeful one that I always end with so that people
Okay.
leave feeling better.
Okay,
Give me one.
Is it ready, Kelsey? The funny or
Yeah,
your hopeful
it's one
one?
I have
Okay, you go.
memorized. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
And
So then,
it's in my
Go
book
ahead.
as well. Um, it's it's one that came from a moment of realization last year that there was nothing fundamentally wrong in my life anymore, and like, what do you do with that? How do you live when you're not in survival mode? And so it's titled "When the Map is No Longer Highlighted in Survival." What do I do after surviving a crosswalk I spent 29 years building as I crossed? After the traffic has calmed, the snow has settled, and the sun has waved me across the street, what do I do with these painted hands? They never learned how to hold, just to fold my feelings into my pocket as I helped others across. These concrete feet haven't learned how to beat their crust off just to fight off the weight of each year. What do I do when the construction is complete? How do I step on an unfamiliar sidewalk instead of sticking around to sit in my handiwork for a while? To admire the elbow grease I pushed for to allow myself a release into the life I fought for. How do I walk on? How do I know which road to follow when the map is no longer highlighted in survival? I'm learning. They call this a revival. And it's my turn to create the paths I discover. I'm no longer taking cover or being pulled into the cracks, and I'm learning. The hard hat I crafted from my own back never actually fit me, just enough to look protected. I'm learning to remove it. Let my head breathe sky again. Let my hair feel breeze again. I'm learning to let my feelings unfold, especially the good ones. I'm told their names are relieved, peaceful, fulfilled, alive. I'm learning these feelings will live longer outside of my pocket. I'm learning. My crosswalk meant I built a curbside safe enough to take my first step as I begin building a sidewalk all my own. One that can hold the weight of the heavy and the hopeful.
That's nice.
Well, that spoken word, well done. Yeah, yeah. That's
Yep,
the
I
other
do
thing
both.
with the yeah, nice, nice. Oh my goodness, the pacing, everything. You could just
Yeah,
very
it was
nice.
really
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
And you know
Oh
what I
my
like
goodness.
about it? I love when we take things that are kind of mundane, like a crosswalk, and
Mhm.
turn it into this whole low key kind of its own universe. You know,
Mhm.
I like that. I like that a lot, and it's
Yeah,
still very clear and it makes sense. And you know, not that I like it. I like it. I like that
yeah,
the message is very clear and succinct, and it's there. You know.
yeah. And spoken word is rapidly becoming the new way that young people express themselves. And
Yeah.
so that, well, yeah, well done, Kelsey. Yeah, thank you. Okay, Elizabeth.
Okay. I have a poem here that it's not as light as I thought it was. I changed my mind, but I picked up this one just because I also, when I started writing short stories years ago, I used to write horror stories. I love a good horror story, so I would write horror stories, and then I've transitioned that into poems now. And so one of the things I've always wanted to do is try and hit upon every kind of iconic horror creature. Like in my book, I have a poem about a witch, I have one about a ghost or whatever. And so I wrote a poem for this one's about a werewolf, and I don't I know it was for a prompt, but I can't remember what the prompt was. And I remember marinating on that idea for a while, and it finally just kind of hit me. So this is called Ballad for the Werewolf. Okay, and I want to stress that's the other thing about my poetry. A lot of them are just stories. I always I want to stress that they're just stories that instead of writing it out in long form like a real story, I just use poetry to do it instead. So this one is called Ballad for the Werewolf. Slowly, slowly, I creep into the wood. I seek the goddess, the maiden that presides overnight. I'm drawn to her essence, her light, her light. So I creep. The time has come to worship the moon. It's begun. Onto the rocks I climb to howl at her. It's time. A transformation, a change, a shift. From man to beast, so swift, so swift. A transformation, a shift, a change. Gone is the human, only instinct and rage. She gives me power, oh might, oh might. So quickly I steal into night, into night. I seek my prey, magnificent feast of tender flesh, and I'll eat. For now is the time that I creep through the dark wood, and I seek, I seek.
That is so, I mean, two different styles. I mean, you ladies are very different in your styles, but your delivery has impact. I mean,
Thank you.
this has really been a pleasure, and a treat. So we're going to see both of you at the convention in June. Yes.
Yes. I'll be there on the
Okay.
8th. I have something to do on
Oh,
the 7th. I'll
yeah.
be there on Saturday. I won't be there on Friday.
Yeah, because June 8th is where we showcase Georgia poets. And so we're
Right.
putting together a list of all the poets. Man, I hope they bring it like you, Elizabeth. I mean, no,
Same
I'm only
thing.
kidding. They will. They will. We're screening folks now. And then Kelsey, you're going to be doing the Blackberry Peach
Yep.
Slam competitions, and so we got to try and get as many youth to come, and your books are going to be there, of course, where people can autograph your books. Is where can they get them? Do they get them at Amazon
Mine
or
is
what?
available on Amazon right now for sure, and then I'm going to try and get it out other places, but for sure it's on Amazon.
Yeah,
Okay.
mine will be available anywhere that you order books. You can go to your own indie bookstore, they'll order it at your library, but also it's just on my website would probably be the easiest for directing folks.
Okay. And this is the point where you shout out your publishers. Please do shout out your publishers.
Mine is self-published.
Self-published.
Mhm.
Really?
All of
Okay.
my projects are self-published.
Okay. And so, are you interested in having a traditional press pick up your work?
Yeah, like I'm not
Yeah.
against it. I've been submitting other manuscripts out. There just been a few of my stuff that I wanted complete control over.
Okay. And you,
Yeah, I know.
Elizabeth?
This one was the first poetry book I published, and I just wanted to get out there. You know, I'm recently divorced. Last month was a year, and so one of the things I wanted to do was this was on my bucket list. Once I signed those papers, I was like, all right, I'm gonna make this happen for myself. But I was just burdened with all this dead weight essentially, and so I was like, nope, I want to do this, and me being as impatient as I am, I wasn't going to try and wait and sell it to someone. So I found this service called Telltale Poetry. It was fantastic. And
They
so they
did do a
helped me
good
with
job.
yeah, they did. I mean, they designed the cover, they did the, all the interior formatting, all the stuff. I mean, they were really good, you know.
Mhm.
So and it was done fast. It just so happened it was last summer, right as school was ending, I got in contact with them, and then by the time the new school year started, it was done, you know. Of course, it helped that I was on vacation, so I could put that time in during the summer, I didn't have anything to do. So
Yeah. Yeah, well, this is the moment also to shout out your. We pre-put them in the chat, so people can access that later. But if you want to shout out your Instagram or your forms of social media, you want to share them right here on screen. That'll be awesome.
sure. Everything on my end is a work in progress because I'm just learning how
Always
to use
is.
Instagram and
Mhm.
my website. I thought I was making gains and I'm not. But anyway, my website is elizabethmichaud.com, and then my Instagram is elizmichpoet, ELIZMICHPOET.
And that's on Instagram. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And Kelsey.
Yeah, and my website is kelkbpoetry.com. That's KELKAYB poetry.com. And my Instagram and all of my social medias are all at kelkb poetry. And the
Yeah.
kelkb play on my name. My full name is Kelsey K. Bigelow, so it's Kel K B.
Well, good thing it's already in the chat. I have to mention Kelsey because I went to your website. Wow. The difference that when you have time and you're doing it to make a living, it's very well done. I have to
Mhm.
shout you out on that.
I
But you're
appreciate
also a professional. It's not
it.
it's not a comparison. We
I
all we
also
all
Right.
yeah.
I also have a 10-year career in marketing, so
There
Oh,
you go. Yeah.
that
that helps.
helps.
Yeah. I was gonna
That's
say
funny because I just made my first Instagram reel. That took me like 2 days. I was like, what the hell?
It's
But
yeah,
work.
but I finally I finally got it. My kids were like, Mom,
yeah,
don't worry. The next one will only take you, a couple hours.
yeah, yeah. But I mean the two of you, I mean hopefully this is not the you guys continue to network or interact with each other because you have so much to give. I am so grateful that you took the time out of your schedules to do this interview. I will be posting it, and once it comes up in the feed, I'm going to actually send it out to you. We should be in a position where you can actually upload it wherever
Okay.
you and share it wherever you want raw. I tried to make sure we didn't have any distractions or anything. And so, with the parting words, I will say that the NFSPS National Convention will take place in Roswell, Georgia at the Doubletree Hotel from June 5th through June 10th, correct? Okay, and if you want to learn more about that, you go to what is it, NFSPS
NFSPS.net.
.net. Okay, yes, I was going to say I can hear Susan now, very proud that we got that correct. So young people, if you're listening to this or you're listening to your teacher, Miss John, she rocked. Kelsey, I know that we mentioned Caleb, your partner in crime. The Negro artist, tell him that we're going to get him on the next one. But we're shouting him out right now. He's a very powerful poet as well. And all the rest of the NSFSPF poets and the Georgia Poetry Society. April is Poetry Month. Get out there and get it done.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Wait.